What's going on, guys? Welcome to the David F. Haas podcast. I'm in the podcast studio today with a new friend, Adriana Mastronardi. And she's a fitness and nutrition coach. She kind of went through her own journey. She's a teacher. She's a mother. We got connected because Zach's girlfriend, partner, was in the program, and so that's how we got connected. And then we started. Zach said, "Hey, I think Adriana has a really good story here, so I wanted to get you on the podcast. You're local, and you kind of have this great, inspiring story from what I've heard about it. And so part of this podcast is going to be about me kind of getting to know that story as well, which I'm super excited to learn. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I love having coaches on the podcast because. One is, I like being involved with people that want to help other people. There's this exercise I do with clients where I get them to tune into winning the lottery, where every single need that they've ever had, ever needed has been met, every material item they've ever wanted. And I kind of put them into the process of really feeling it. Imagine you won the lottery and you lived in a big mansion and you traveled all over the world. And then I keep asking them, now what? You traveled the world, you skied the Swiss Alps, you surfed in Hawaii, and I just keep saying, now what? And just kind of it's a technique to get them connected to their purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And so once you've kind of checked all the boxes, what are you going to do now? Yep. And but then the actual ultimate goal of the exercise is to get them to tune into the fact that after they did all of the things, and even after they aligned with their purpose, they would help people. Mm-hmm. And so what I learned is that we all have it backwards, right? We all are trying to check all of our own boxes first. And then once we do that, then we'll help people, mm-hmm. right? But how you check all of your boxes is by helping people first. And that's mm-hmm. essentially what businesses are doing, they're solving problems for people. And so yeah, I always love insights from coaches, because one is usually coaches have had their own journey, which mm-hmm. we're going to talk about yours. And so because of that journey they had, then they want to kind of scream it from the rooftops. And I'm guessing that's similar to what you went through, what I went through. But then the second thing is that they get to talk to so many people, and they get to see how they're struggling, and they help them overcome. They see how that person, put your methods into place, and how they were able to overcome, even maybe outside of your own advice or coaching as well. So I always think it's just a great a snapshot of humanity, and especially people aligning with people that actually want to improve and better themselves. Mm-hmm. So anyways, that was a really long-winded reason why I like having coaches on. But why don't you just start off with your kind of journey, because before we got on the podcast, you were saying that you kind of after you're being a mother, and you kind of had this moment of now what, essentially. Mm-hmm. And that kind of led you to looking a little bit deeper within.
Yeah, I have 3 kids, and so I feel like my entire 30s was having kids, raising, the whole mother thing. So from 30 to 38, that's basically what I did. And then I got to a point close to 40 where I didn't really recognize who I was, or I wasn't really doing anything for myself. And it became apparent because I almost internally started to become resentful. So everything I was doing was for other people, and it's not that I wasn't happy, but I needed more. I knew that there was more in terms of who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up in the world. And so I joined a fitness, a small group fitness facility, and I really got into strength training. And it helped me feel strong. Not that I was my body was changing, but I was doing something for myself, and I was taking my time back. And it was actually really difficult to do at the beginning because I was changing, and people around me were seeing that, and they were uncomfortable with it because it was different. And not that it wasn't the right thing to do, but it's a resistance. There was resistance against what I was doing because it was different for them. And so during that time, it was a little bit difficult to push through and continue on that path because there wasn't as much support mm-hmm. for me in sort of those moments. And not that there was outright rejection, but it's just little comments here and there from different people in your life. And so continued to push through. And then I brought nutrition into the game, and it helped really transform like my mind and my body, because now I got to see the strength that I was building. So I wasn't spinning my wheels and trying to hang on to like the next quick fix. I was really nourishing my body for the goals that I had. So I hired a coach to help me do that, because I was trying to do something for years and I wasn't able to do it myself. So I knew I needed like an outside force or some accountability. And then I just realized how many other women feel the way that I feel, and how many other women are lost. And so I almost felt this duty that I had this secret. I had this magical knowing, and I wanted to share it with people. So I got a certification in nutrition coaching, and I had to take on 2, they call them guinea pigs. I actually don't even know where that name comes from. I think it's a funny word, but a funny phrase. But I had 2 people that I actually had to coach through a nutrition program. And that's how I got my certification. And then I got my personal training, to seal the deal kind of thing. Even though I've been training for 10 plus years, you almost need that like stamp of approval for people to say, you know what you're talking about. And then I started coaching people, and the impact that I get from that, or what I see from the clients that I'm working with. Like I had a client say to me, "You've helped me do something in 3 months that I could never do in 10 years by myself." And I mean, she did all the work. I just provided like the space and the belief and the accountability and guided her along that process.
Yeah.
And so, it almost seems like a natural progression, because I'm a teacher by trade. So this is just a reflection in a different realm of teaching and coaching people to be their best selves. And so, I want to continue to do it. And it's like we have 2 jobs, or I have 2 jobs, but, one, I'm passionate about both, but this is almost like the next level for me. And creating a business, I know nothing about business, but that's a challenge for me as well. So, like what's next? How can I up level in different ways?
Yeah, right on. Yeah, so I mean, you said a lot there, and I think that I would like to pick apart some of it and see, the big one was that kind of was an aha for me, was when you had mentioned that when you got your diet right, like things started shifting for you mentally.
Yes.
And so just expand on that, I guess, is what I'm kind of interested in.
Sure. So I was always the person who went towards like the flashy new thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had a vacation to go on. I needed to lose weight for the vacation, or I had a dress to fit in for a wedding. I needed to lose weight or get into that dress. And so the things that I would do would be more drastic, because I wasn't planning ahead for it. I wasn't eating as a lifestyle. It was sort of just maybe watching what other people were doing and then taking it on and trying it out and see if it worked. And so what I learned to do was eat for my goals and sustainably be able to maintain what I was doing. So if you go on, a 7-day juice cleanse, you can't maintain juicing forever.
Yeah.
So what habits have you built in that 7 days of juicing? Not much, right? So when you come out of that, sure, you'll have lost weight on the scale, but mostly water weight. And then how do you maintain that? You haven't built any habits to know how to maintain that. And so I learned how to eat more protein. Actually, first, let me backstep. I became aware of what I was eating. So I think that's the first thing, awareness of what's actually happening. Because if you're not aware, you can think you're eating healthy, or you can think that you're doing all the right things. But unless you actually bring awareness to it, you cannot say for sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I wasn't getting in enough protein. I wasn't drinking enough water. I wasn't monitoring my carbohydrate and fat intake just to meet the goals that I said I wanted. So if I wanted fat loss, you have to eat in a deficit. Your protein has to be high to support your workouts. And the food that you take in has to be able to support that. You can't just randomly decide what it is that you're going to eat, And so I just started to pay attention and track and really come to understand what worked for me. And the more and more you do that, the more intuitive you can be about the choices that you're making. Like even drinking, even alcohol. I've severely reduced the amount that I drink. Not because I disagree with it, but because it just doesn't work for me and I don't feel good after. And so you just start to question the patterns that you're taking part in and ask why when you become aware of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that makes really good sense. And I mean, I think awareness is so key. I mean, my whole coaching system is based on this like triangle, which is like realize, release, and realign. And realize is first, because it's like you have to have the awareness before anything shifts. And if you're unaware, then you're just kind of like floating. And so usually the awareness in itself is enough to like create major shifts. But I think the problem in like the fitness and health industry is that there's so much awareness. It's almost like there's a point now where it's like there's too much information, and it's like if you ask anybody what it takes to get into shape, pretty much everyone knows. Like stop eating processed foods, don't eat sugar, don't eat potato chips, and move your body a little bit, right? And yeah, you can maximize it and you can get the best at it, and you can count your macros. It's like but it's like it really all comes down to, I think. I mean, maybe you can correct me, but I think it's pretty simple. But I think what happens is people get so hung up on that next thing, or like what's in now, like forever it was counting calories, and it was counting macros,
right.
And then it was more intense workouts, and it's just constantly changing. But the truth hasn't really ever shifted. It's like put actual food into your body and move.
Right, like sleep is a priority. Your overall activity throughout the day, water, and then nutritious food. But what I would say is that information evolves because we learn and we know better, so maybe this was the fad at the time, but then new information came out and this maybe becomes the new thing. But you have to really adopt what works for you. So, if somebody's working with me and I start them off by tracking their macros with the intent, hopefully, to get them to a more aligned space in their lives where they can choose better without having to track single thing that goes into their mouth, right? But if a client is coming to me and they want fat loss, then we need to be a little bit more aware of what we're eating if we're going to achieve that result. But overall, it has to be sustainable for you. You have to be able to pick the right foods and eat nutritiously without thinking about it or without having a plan and being so focused on it.
Yeah, and what's always worked for me is to go like the extreme route. Like, I went vegetarian, in 2005, and that was like a real simple way to like just like eliminate a bunch of like shitty food that I was eating. Yeah. Like I couldn't have McDonald's anymore and all that kind of stuff. So that really worked for me, and I've stuck to that. And then with alcohol, I like tried every variation of moderation, and it just never worked. And so then I just cut it out, right? Yeah. And I'm kind of at this like this crossroads here where I'm like going to do it again with diet, where I'm just going to like eliminate like all sugar from my diet, which I know sounds extreme, but like that's what, I think when you say you have to find what works for you. And I think that's like, for me, what has worked in the past is just like a really hard line that it's like, you can't do this and it's a little bit more difficult with food because you need to eat. Right. And also I think there's like so much going against people when it comes to food, like just with like, even if you just walk through the grocery store, it's like everything is just like so processed, and there's so much sugar, and sugar is like more addictive than drugs, Yeah. And it's like it's easy to just eliminate drugs a lot. Not easy, I shouldn't say, but it's like it's easier to eliminate drugs because it's not socially it's not socially acceptable. But like food, you got to eat, and there's also like a lot of emotion attached to food, and so. That's what I found has worked for me, and I think you hit the nail on the head. You got to find what works for every single person. Did you find that when you got your food right, like your mind just became more clear also? Yeah,
you have a better focus. Yeah. And you were I was able to meet the goals that I wanted. So now I knew what worked for me, and I could maintain that. Yeah. But it's funny that you're saying, there's so much around us that almost make it hard to eliminate those things. And I was just at a conference last week, and we were commenting that they had like a continental breakfast, but it was Danishes, donuts, high sugar yogurt, and juices. So there's no, like even eggs, there's no protein, nothing like that. And so if you haven't prepared ahead to bring things for yourself that make you feel good, you're stuck either not eating that and starving, or starting your day with very high sugar snacks that you're going to crash in. So even just big organizations who put together events or things that we go to, there isn't even that understanding of what is nutritious, or what, maybe it's just cheaper to do that.
Yeah, but I think like they're just a representation of what's happening in the general population, and it's like, one of the things that when I like, because I've had my own like kind of journey like as well with respect, like all of my awareness, like my goal now is like enlightenment. Like I just want to continue to move towards higher states of consciousness, but that awareness began with food, right? It's like when I started realizing what I was actually putting in my body, I also started like recognizing all of the programs that I had just bought into, that had just been fed to me, that I was unaware of. And so when I had that awareness with food, and then it also came along with the mental clarity as well, right? I was like, oh, wait a second, like what else have I bought into? And so then that kind of opened the door for me to keep going deeper, right?
And questioning, right? There's such a connection between gut and your brain.
Yeah. And so, I went through when I went veg, I lost like 25 pounds, and I kept that weight off forever because it was just like, that was my new thing. And then I went down this path of like, I'm going to get really ripped now. And so I weighed like 195 pounds, and I looked good. Like I should have stayed there is what I should have done. But I made this decision. I was going to get like to like 10% body fat.
Okay.
I basically starved myself to do it. And I think I literally like messed up my metabolism by doing that. Like, because I just wouldn't eat. If I hit my calories, I was so strict. I just wouldn't eat, and it was a really unhealthy way to do it. And so I didn't have like a plan for success. So when I hit that goal, I took the picture for Instagram. And then I said, look at me, here I am, 10% body fat. And I was just shredded too. Like I looked like I just cut for like a fight or something. And then I just basically proceeded over the next like 6 years just to gain all that weight back, just slowly, and because I didn't have that plan. So it's been like this like journey that I've kind of gone on to sort this all out. And I have so much, like for me, it's like there's so much emotional ties to food, like with respect to like, using it to like not feel pain and all in my childhood and all. I've uncovered all of that stuff. But the one thing that is always sat with me and I kind of like is like, it's like, if you want to, and this is what you touched upon in your kind of opener there, was like, if you want to be different, you have to be willing to be different. Right. And a lot of people aren't. And like, as I've kind of gone in and out of health and whatever, what I've noticed is like when I'm like really strict and I'm eating clean and whatever, if I go to like, I remember I was like doing so good. I was like just eating perfectly for like months and months and months. And then we went on vacation and like everyone was getting ice cream and I wouldn't eat ice cream, right? And I like resisted like 3 days in a row, like, and then on the fourth day I finally cracked, and that was like for me because like I'm like a crackhead. Yeah. Like once I have one, I just fall right off, right? And but it was like, but now I'm like gonna lean into that discomfort of like, not doing what everyone else is doing, almost kind of like, and that's kind of like what I liked about being veg. I still like that about being veg, is like I'm different than everybody else. Yeah, that's what I like about not drinking. It's like I'm different. I like that about entrepreneurship. It's like I'm different, and so now I'm just going to lean into it. And I had to have like all these ups and downs and these awarenesses. And the big thing that came to me recently is like the lows are like training ground. Like when you're in a low, like for example, like after you kind of had kids, and it was like kind of like a low moment, and from that low moment came the birth of,
Adriana, if
Adriana,
you would have asked me 10 years ago, do you think you would be doing what you're doing now? I would say absolutely not. There's no way, and the idea came from, so when I joined a community, so I hired a coach, and that brought a community of women together, and there was another woman in the community who started coaching, and I looked at her and I thought, well, why can't I? Like, why are we different? Like, why couldn't I do what you're doing? And that's really what sparked it. Like, why can't I? And so then I started my own journey. But I want to go back to what you were saying in terms of restriction and restricting food. So I have a client who came to me and she was eating maybe 1,100 calories for a very long time because she was afraid to eat more. Yeah. And all she knew was that eating low calories, cardio would get her to lose weight, but she was not losing any weight. So when she's like, I want to lose fat. And I said to her, that's great, but we're not going there right now. Like what we need to do is fix your metabolism, get your body to trust you again and bring your calories back up. And the fear that brought was so big because she was like I was telling her she had to eat more. And so the thought is, oh crap, I'm going to eat more and now I'm going to gain weight. But in 4 months, we have gone from 1,100 to almost 2,000 calories and she has not gained a single pound. And to her, it's like mind blowing that she had this mentality that food was bad and she had to restrict. And so now she's in a healthy place. It's like, okay, now we can dive deep again. Not that deep, but we can start the process from a healthy point of view without this idea that restriction is the answer to everything. And that's almost one of my most favorite processes so far, that we've gotten to a point where she doesn't feel that the answer is restriction, that the answer is more cardio and more stress on your body.
And you know what, like that's been so, like that's a program that people have bought into, that you need to restrict your calories in order to lose weight. And you know, I remember even like Julian Michaels, you know, like the be all end all of fitness. I remember her doing like an Instagram video where she was like, it's this real simple, guys, it's calories in and calories out. And I think there is an element to that.
Sure.
But I actually recently read this book called The Obesity Code. It's a great book, and he basically like debunks calorie restriction, because what happens is your body, and you can probably correct me if I'm wrong here, but your body, as you continue to reduce calories, it continues to reduce like output.
Right, slows down, your metabolism slows down,
Right, and so it's like that's why you're chronically tired and more cold.
It happens right away.
Right, and so so you can eat more and still lose weight and you know, and have more energy and be more vibrant and all of this stuff. And so I thought that was really interesting. The other interesting take, that which I think now is like becoming more mainstream, is that it's basically all about insulin. You know, it's like insulin spikes, and you're seeing more and more people going there. It's like recognizing that this like high sugar diet that everyone is on, even unconsciously, they don't even realize how much sugar is in everything. These insulin spikes are what's really keeping people's like weight up. And again, it just comes down to like, eat whole foods.
Or a good combination of all three of them. The coming back out of it, though, the coming back out of a diet or a deficit, and you said that too, is I think one of the most important things. So you can enter into like a restrictive phase. So you talked about, you know, you took the Instagram picture, you showed off the six, you know, the 8-pack abs maybe, and then you 6 years and you gained everything back. So part of it is teaching my women to come out of that deficit. So now we've gotten to a goal. You can't stay there. We have to come out of it. And so we have to increase your calories to a level where, you know, the in and out kind of balance, and you'll oscillate between a few pounds here and there, but it's not fat. Like you've changed the way your body looks, and you don't want to be eating 1,300 calories for very long. It's not very fun.
Yeah, hell no.
Right? Like you want to be able to enjoy the ice cream in moderation and all the things in moderation, if that's your personality, right? If your personality is, I have to have it all, then maybe we have to think of a different approach or what works best for you. But yeah, there's the program that comes out of it, I think, is more important than losing weight. We all know how to lose weight, or we all know how to do fat loss, really. Yeah.
What do you think is, here's a couple of questions. So, you know, you're working with people, and, you know, you can use your own experience too. It's like, what do you think is like the biggest block for people to actually like make change? Like they've tried, you know, like like one of the big things that I teach is that most people will remain the same their whole lives. You know, it's like I look at everything as on the scale of consciousness, and so, you know, there's levels of consciousness, and most people will remain at one level of consciousness their whole life. They might, you know, like say, for example, anger is a level of consciousness. Like we all know the person that's just angry at the world. Like my wife's grandfather, he's 82, Italian, 82-year-old. He's just angry at the world.
Yeah, you're not going to change him.
There's like a great story of like actually once there was like a swarm of bees. You know, like I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but like it's like just bees that just they swarm, and they're looking for a new hive or whatever. Anyways, they swarmed his house like on this one tree, and there's like thousands. He goes out there with a shirt over, like a coat over his head. He's swatting at him with a racket. He's angry at the bees, you know, for just flying in his yard. You know, and so we know people that remain at one state of consciousness, or just overweight, or in terrible relationships or whatever. And so it's like, what do you think is like the catalyst or the thing that like finally usually snaps people out of it, that where they finally call you and say, you know, I've been doing this forever, and you know, or what was it for you? You know, I mean, you kind of touched upon it already. That was like this kind of like this low moment, you know, but like what do you think it usually is?
I was just tired of my own like bullshit. I was just tired of feeling like crap, and I think really that's it. You're just tired, and you need someone or something to reinvigorate you, and you're in your own way and you don't even see it. You don't see all the excuses that you're making. You've operated this way for such a long time that it's just comfortable, and we all gravitate towards comfort because that's how we're safe. That's how we stay safe, and that's how it makes sense for us. So to come out of that and do something uncomfortable is really, really hard. So I think you have to get to a point where you're just tired of the excuses that you're making for yourself, and level up. Like that's how I was just tired. I was tired of saying I wanted something but not doing anything to get there.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know. I didn't know another way. So that's why I needed help. I needed someone to guide me and give me that accountability. And I still have a coach because I thrive on that. I'm accountable to somebody for the things that I'm doing that I say that I want to do. So
yeah, I think the thing that helps with coaching the most is that, what I always tell people is like, I help people pull themselves out of the jar that they're in, so they can see the label that it's so easy for an outsider to see, right? Yeah. It's like one of like the things I do for so many clients is like that I have to believe it myself, but like I'll pull somebody outside of the jar that's like making like 50 grand a year, and I'm like, you're not a 50 grand a year person, you're 100 grand a year. And once they really, because I explain to them why I see that in them, and I have to really believe it. If I thought they were a 50 grand a year person, I wouldn't tell them that, right? But like if I really believe that they're a 100 grand a year person or even more, and I show them that within like months, they're making 100 grand a year. It's because they finally see it.
Or they're owning what they say they want.
Yeah.
And they energetically take on that energy and believe it wholeheartedly, right? Like they wake up in the morning and they say, I'm 100 grand a year person or a month person or whatever it is. And they believe it. And so if you're working with somebody and they believe that about themselves, or if I don't believe that I can coach people or that I can make a difference or an impact, it's going to show through in my timidness maybe and in my indecisiveness. It obviously, the more you coach, the better you get, the more you feel in charge and impactful. But if you don't believe it at your core, it's going to come through eventually.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think that's just like the power of coaching. Is just, and I love that idea of just being tired of it. It's like just so tired of just like like I record a podcast called like What's Your Broken Record? Like what's that thing that you've been talking about for your whole entire life that you just never finally like writing a book or starting a business or getting into shape? And it's like at some point you just want to like just be like, enough's enough. Like let's go do something about it.
Right. I think the hardest is the first step, right? The first step is always the hardest. So I just also started a podcast.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's called A Cup of Dree. And it's like just my fitness thoughts in the morning, going back and forth to the gym. So you can kind of hear the hum of the car in the background. So it's not perfect, but I was waiting and waiting and waiting to have like the perfect setup or the best new microphone or something. And a friend was like, November 1st, like, that's your deadline. Just do it. Like, get it out imperfectly, like messy action. And even if you say all the wrong things, you've started and you've gotten over that like one hump. And that's just even in changing your habits, right? I work out in the morning, 5:45 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I get up at the gym for like 5:30, 5:45. It is not easy. It's never easy to wake up at the crack of dawn when everyone is sleeping in your house, right? But the more you do it, it just becomes a habit. So I've trained myself to be that person. So you can say I'm not a morning person, or how do you do that? You're just choosing not to take that action or take that first step. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It could be, let me try it once this week and see how I feel.
Yeah.
Do that for like a couple weeks and then, move on.
Yeah. And I think I think this is like something too that I think is big. It's like, I think what you've done with fitness and, what you did is like, you put the thing like that thing that, you were tired of first. Right. And so like, that's what I did with fitness as well. It's like I finally hired a trainer, like after years of kind of going to the gym, going off, I finally just like hired a trainer. And it cost me a lot of money, but it's like I will never miss because I'm cheap. I'm not cheap, but I'm like I'm actually not cheap. I'm the reverse of cheap, which is like I'm a spend, but like I value money, let's say, and so I would never call her and be like, I'm not coming today, like because I'm not paying that $85 to not show up, right? So and because of that connection I have to money, it's like that was like my motivation that I needed. And so the interesting thing that has actually happened recently though is now that I've put that first for, you know, a couple of years. I've been working out with her 3-4 days a week usually, and I'm at a point now where I'm like, oh, actually, maybe it's time to put something else first, right? Like nutrition, maybe, you know, like maybe I need to like, you know, prep my food first and then do a workout later on, because now I feel like I have the habit of going to the gym consistently for 2 years. And so I haven't played with that yet, but I'm like, I can see how that kind of works. You know, it's like they talk about it in Atomic Habits of like habit stacking, you know, it's a great book. And, but I think there's something really to putting the most important thing in your life the very first thing in the morning, you know, because it's like that's where, you know, you have the energy and then it's done and everything else.
Yes, I love that part. It's done.
Yeah.
Like you're putting you first, whether it's fitness or nutrition. You know, you have a family as well, but if you're not filling up your cup, I know that sounds cliche, but if you're not, everyone else is pulling energy from you all day. Like you
100%.
have to do something for yourself, whatever that is. You have to take that 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and don't feel guilty about it, and don't think that people are going to be mad at you about it. Like it's about you. It really is. You have to be selfish in that way, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, for me, it's like I work like really good until about 2:00, maybe 1 even. And then I'm like just shut down. Like Zach was here yesterday and we were trying to shoot some stuff and I was like, I got nothing, man. Like I'm not mentally there anymore. Yeah. Partly because probably my diet's messed up, right? But when the diet gets better, I'm sure I'll have more energy, maybe a little bit longer in the day. But it's like if you put yourself second or whatever, usually last is what most people are doing. It's like that. Those are the results that you're going to get. Is because you can look at the list of your day and all the things that you did, and if exercise and eating right was at the bottom of that list, or if it's the last thing that you did, you know, you're going to get terrible results. And so I think that's huge. It's like both you and I did that, is like just put that thing first. The other thing that I'm interested in is you coming out of who you were to who you like have become, right? And like that, you said that there was resistance or friction there, and that's something that I've like really tuned into, is that when I was like back in my day when I was drinking, like I owned Treehouse Bar and Grill downtown forever, and like I was like the party guy, right? And then when I became the sober guy, it was like
night and day.
A lot of people like didn't even know how to like receive me anymore, right? And so I think that's something that people need to like become like really aware of, and I'd be interested to kind of like hear your story of that friction, because you have to be ready for it, because if you're not, the people around us influence us so much, even unconsciously. We can even be aware that somebody is going to influence us, or somebody's going to say something that might pull us back down, you know, and without even realizing it, we just end up doing what they say. Like, for example, let me give you an example. Like my aunt and uncle who helped raise me, like they've always been very influential in my life. And so they could say like one little thing, and even though I would be like, they're clueless, you know, like I would consciously know that they don't know, like they would be like, you know, they would want me to get like a job, right? Like, and have security. They want me to be a teacher or something, like where it's like, you know, you got a consistent paycheck and like all of these things. And that's what they wanted. But I was like, no, I'm an entrepreneur. And I could see like how I could go way beyond anything by being the entrepreneur. But even though they would say that, it would make me start questioning. And that questioning played out for a long, long time in my life. Whereas anytime I would hit a roadblock in entrepreneurship, I'd be like, fuck.
They were right.
I made the wrong decision. They were right the whole entire time. And actually, even recently, my aunt, I had this beautiful sailboat, and I was like in this weird transitionatory space where I was opening up Lungo Vita. I just had a new baby, and I was like, oh man, I'm not really using the boat as much. And my aunt was like, you should sell that boat. And I was like, I'm like, yeah, but what am I gonna do like with it? Like, it's like, I'm like, she's like, well, you have some extra money in the bank. And I'm like, I don't care about extra money. It's like, I was like, I sold the boat for $50,000. I was like, what am I gonna do with $50,000? Like, literally, it means nothing, right? And so, I like dismissed it, but then I sold the boat, and I regret it. You know, and now I'm like, now I don't have a boat. And so it's like you have to be so careful about the people that are around you, and not that they're doing it. I don't think they're doing it maliciously. It's all unconscious, right? But we have to be so like hyper aware. And like I say, I am hyper aware, and even though I was hyper aware, I still allowed that influence to you know, make a decision for me. So now when you're doing something that is difficult, along with like this change, and people are receiving you differently, it becomes even more like, for example, like not eating the ice cream. It's like, well, one is my body's saying go eat the ice cream, like there's a craving for it all, and then also like the influence of not being included,
or not being part of
the fun
that everyone else is having,
and like, and so there was just so much happening there, right? And so I don't know. I know I rambled there, but I'd be interested to get your take.
I love this question because there's two parts of it for me. So there's like the family part and the friend part. So when I started adopting more of a regimented fitness routine, I was working out, I don't know, 4 or 5 days a week. And one of those days was a Saturday. So my kids were little. My youngest might have been 1. And I would go from either 8 to 9 or 9 to 10. I don't remember. But my husband was supportive in the way that he could be, but he would always make this comment to me, don't you want to stay home and cuddle with the kids in bed? Like you're leaving to go work out and there's only little ones. And I would still go work out, but it would make, not angry, but I would feel so guilty, like I was missing out on this time. I still pushed through, right? Like there was still this like resistance or pull through, and he didn't do it maliciously. It was just like he genuinely loved doing that, and he wanted me to experience it as well. And what I realized was that was his thing. Like, not that I didn't love cuddling with my children, but the thing is, they're not going to remember if I cuddled with them on a Saturday morning. They're going to remember that I love them, and maybe they'll remember that mommy went and did something for herself and exercised, right? Which could become a habit for them. But it took me a really long time to understand that difference, that it wasn't about me. It was about his perception and him throwing it at me like I should be that way as well, right? So, but it's hard, like you said, when you're starting something new, there's all these different emotions that come aboard that can stop you in your tracks and prevent you from moving forward. So it wasn't resistance, but it was a way of trying to stop me to do things that they thought were what was best for what was happening in that moment. And then with friends, like the alcohol piece, it's actually so funny to me. People become so uncomfortable. Like they don't know what to do when you're not drinking. They don't know what to do. Like, well, aren't you going to have one? Oh, it's just a little bit. It's just a little bit. And then it's almost like they think that you're judging them for drinking. Yep. Like, I don't drink that much, or I'm not judging. Like, I don't judge what you're doing. It's not that I don't care what you're doing. You do you, I do me, we're fine. But there's a lot of like, we'd go to a party, like, oh, just drink, just have a couple drinks. We're going to get you to drink. Why is this a conversation? Why are we talking about this? Like, just have fun, do what you're doing.
I can tell you why.
But what I realize is just a projection. Like, it's uncomfortable because not that I was even a big drinker, but I would engage and I would drink like everybody else is doing. So when I'm pulling back, because at the beginning it was like I had a goal, like I had a photo shoot I was doing. So I didn't want to drink because of inflammation and all the things. And then you said something about like being the rebel. Now it's more like it's not that I'm not doing it out of spite, but it's like I'm going to be that person that's different. Yeah. I don't really need to do that. I don't need to have alcohol to have fun, and not that they're using it to have fun, but now it's like, how much fun can I have without it? Like, can I create that high on my own without taking in that drug? Yeah. So so there's so much resistance, and like you said, it's not malicious or it's not consciously, but those pushbacks and those emotions that come at you, if you don't have a strong why as to what you're doing, will stop you in your tracks every time.
100%. Yeah. 100%. There were so many things that came to me while you were talking there, and I forget them all. But the why, and I had to go through this, and actually that's part of the reason why I completely quit drinking, because if I said, because I'm in the bar business, and like I wasn't like a drinker outside of the bar, but I was in the bar 7 days a week, so it's like I was drinking all the time. And so if I said to people, I'm not drinking tonight, it was like just constant, like just, come on, man, come on, like let's go. And then sometimes I would give in, sometimes I wouldn't, but it was exhausting. And so then when I switched to, I don't drink.
Right.
It was like people just like, they just backed off right away, right? And they're like, oh, this guy's got a problem or something, whatever it was. I didn't care, because it was it got me out of that, like that constant, like just harassment. And it was obviously amplified in the bar scene, of course. And then the other thing is that I think you touched on with your husband and being in bed with the kids is, I think that was such a critical point for people to understand, is that you have to do you. And so I've had people say to me, it's like, I could never not drink, right? Or I could never take the risk that you take with respect to, opening up Lungo Vito was a huge risk, and put every dollar that I have into the place, right? And so it's a big risk, and people are like, I could never do that. And it's like, well, I know you couldn't, right? Because I'm me and you're you, right? And not that I'm trying to, but what you're doing is for you, and what I'm doing is for me. And I think we have like a draw to be average because there's safety in those numbers, right? And everything in our being with respect to our mind is about protection. And when you step away from the herd, you are now exposed, right? And you don't feel that safety in the numbers anymore. And so because of that, there's resistance and there's a draw back into the crowd. So anyone that's making real change, anyone is at a point, that's listening to this podcast, where like, I'm just tired and I'm ready to start stepping out of this BS. I think this is like a good podcast that we kind of like walked over, is like just to have the awareness of what's going to happen when you do. Right. People are going to try and draw you back in. The drinking, this was the other thing that came to me. It all pretty much came back to me. So this is great. The drinking is like, in the drinking, the reason that people are so uncomfortable when someone doesn't drink, right, is because at some level they know that they shouldn't be drinking, right? And I don't want to say it. I don't have a problem with people drinking either. Like I have all of my friends. I've been on Vegas trips and bachelor parties, and I'm stone sober, and my buddies are we were all a bunch of drunks back in the day, and they've all morphed into just regular drinkers now. But when we were in our younger days, like, we were party animals, and I went through all of that. But at some level, everybody knows that is not good for you. That is going to mess you up. It's going to make you make decisions that you normally wouldn't make, and so they don't want to be alone in that decision.
Yes.
All right. And so they want to pull you down to their level, and it's like, not like they're doing it on purpose. It's all unconscious. But it's funny, and I'm guessing you probably feel like this with like health and fitness, is that I'm so removed from alcohol now, like just so far removed from it, where my wife and I are watching Love is Blind right now. So it's a nice little escape at the end of the night. And so there's this one scene where the girl is like talking to the guy that she's going to marry, and she's like just drunk. And I'm just like, to me, I'm just like, I'm not even connecting with what that's like anymore. And like, why would you ever make a decision that you're gonna feel terrible in the morning, and she's having this argument with this guy about nothing, and he's like going like, you're a basket case, essentially. And it's not that she was a basket case, but just like alcohol brought out all of her insecurities and all that stuff. And it's like, I'm like, wow, I'm so far removed from that. And I'm guessing that that is probably what happens and even with meat too. It's like, I'm so far removed from eating meat. Like I think about it. Like I don't even really think that like vegetarianism is like the most healthiest diet in the world. Like I know a lot of very unhealthy vegetarians, but like I couldn't even think about eating. Like I had a party, my 1-year-old's birthday party, and we always call her name's Echo, and we call her Eggo, and so we had eggs. Waffles and chicken birthday party, and so I had to buy the fried chicken, right? and put it in my car, and it's like my whole car smelled like fried chicken, and I was like, "Whoa, that smells so good!" But I put myself there of like taking that bite. I couldn't even do it. Like I literally physically couldn't even do it. So I think there comes a point. What I'm trying to get at is, and I'm guessing your experience is the same. There comes a point where you are so removed from who you once were that you can't even imagine going back to that person. And I'm guessing, and where I haven't got there is with like the food end of it yet. And so I'm guessing that you're kind of there now. Like I can't ever see you at this point, like just like falling off completely. And
no, it's so ingrained in my identity.
That's what I was trying to get at,
it's so ingrained in my identity now. And like I'm not completely alcohol free per se. Like we just went on a cruise actually at Christmas, and like you could buy the drink package. And my husband and I talked about it, and like in order to make it viable, you need to drink like 6 or 7 drinks a day.
Yeah, right.
And there would be days that we wouldn't even have one. We were over New Year's, so we had champagne on New Year's,
Right.
you know, but we hardly drank. And, you know, it's just not my identity anymore. And so once I think you get to that level of identifying a certain way, like identifying as somebody who works out, somebody who eats nutritiously, somebody who gets up in the morning or whatever time you work out, it becomes who you are, and it's not something you have to think about much anymore, right? Like they say, like brushing your teeth and taking a shower, mostly, you know, like those kinds of things, it just becomes who you are. And so, you know, you can look back about how far you've come and appreciate the journey, but realize also that there's so much more to learn. And so it's like any goal you get to, it's not the end, you know, like if somebody gets to, I'm going to go back to fat loss again, their fat loss goal, all the habits and things that you created online, you still have to keep moving forward. If, you know, just like your 6-year backwards trend, like you had to keep what you were doing. And if it wasn't sustainable, you couldn't. So you have to do something that works. Again, going back to that, what works for you. And that creates that new identity and that shift and that change.
100%. Here's we're getting near the end here, but like the other question I have is that, you know, from the outside looking in, it's like you're a teacher, you know, you're a mother, you're a fitness coach, you're in good shape, and so like a lot of people are like, how are you doing all that? You know, like what it is that you think that allows you, or you know, what drives you, I guess, I don't know, like how are you doing it all, like, because that's what people say, it's like, that looks like an exhausting life, and it's like, I get why you would say that, you know, I get why people say that about me, and I get why they would see that from you, so it's like, I don't know, give me your perspective on it.
It's a great question. I just don't want to be normal, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I thrive off of taking care of myself. So I'm reading a book called Outlive right now. I forget the author's name, but it's really about, you know, we plan our finances and we plan for the future in so many different ways, but we don't plan on our health when we get older. So like I am hopefully building the strength and the capacity that I need so that when I get to 70 or even 60 or 50, I can keep up with my kids still. I can go on vacations or do things with them that require a specific load of physical activity. I can still do it and not be tired. When I have grandchildren, hopefully one day, I can pick them up, you know? So it's like I'm planning for that. So it's not just about feeling good in my body now, which really is the motivation. Like I'd like to feel good and look good. You know, I don't mind getting older, but I don't want to succumb to like I'm in my 50s now and this is the way that it is. No, not at all. Like I actually feel my best now. Like I feel like I look better and feel better, stronger than I have ever felt. And I just want it to get better. So like the determination and the motivation just comes from that. Like once you start to get a glimpse into that, into like that euphoric feeling, you want it all the time. And it's not always roses. It's not always easy. It's not always happy, you know, but you know what it feels like and you don't want the other way of living. You want that all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think one thing that I think a lot of people are really disconnected from is actually how good you feel when you eat clean. Like, and I wouldn't say that I'm definitely at this point not a clean eater, but I've gone through moments, you know, especially when I went veg, I was part of a documentary, and so like I was like in this movie that my business partner put together, so I had to eat like pretty regimented, you know, exactly kind of what he had laid out, but like I was like high on life, right? Like really, and then not to mention like my productivity was like I would outwork anybody. It was so I was laser focused, you know. Whereas, you know, when I'm off, I'm eating processed foods, eating sugar. It's like I can barely stay focused for 5 minutes.
And so that contrast, you know the contrast, and you know what you don't want anymore because you're aware of it. Whereas before, when you're operating in that level of cloudiness, you can't see the other side.
Right, and I think the big aha is like, or the big wake up is like, is that everyone 90% of the population is cloudy. If we don't even know what it's like to be connected, we don't even know what it's like to be on the other side of the brain fog, because it's just like it's just what everyone is doing. And you know, I also resonate with like, I don't want to be normal. Like everything in my being goes against. I mean, I'm going away on vacation tomorrow for a month, and it's like I go away for a month because it's like I don't want to do what everyone else does on vacation. You know, I want to do something completely different. I want to vacation differently. I want to live differently. And it's not because I think with the way people are doing it is wrong. It's just like I know that in that being different, there's going to be uncomfortability that needs to be faced, and it continues to allow me to look within to continue to do the work so I can keep moving up. And so I strive for like doing the exact opposite that everybody else is doing, not just for the sake of doing it opposite.
The other way,
but because I know it's on the other side, and I think that's what you've experienced also. It's like, yeah, like once you kind of see it, and more so with diet and exercise, like once you kind of feel it, you know, like Dana White, he's gone through like this transformation recently. And Kate Moss used to have a saying that said like, nothing tastes as good as looking this good. and so that's kind of like the restriction. And and he changed it to nothing tastes as good as feeling this good. And I think that's it. It's like, if you can get that clarity, it's like, man, it's like the health would be like, if you're looking at like, for me, it's like enlightenment. It's like health would be like number one. If you get that in check, your mind becomes clear. You can start seeing all of the shit that you've been unable to see because you've just been a cloudy mess. And so I'm guessing that's what's happening. That's what's happened for you over these, you know, years. And you're talking about longevity with your kids and all that stuff. And you know, if you keep going on the path that you're going, maybe you'll live forever, because the way AI is going and robots and all of that stuff, technology, like who knows? Like if you, you know, like there's been predictions that if you are like, you know, in your 40s now, you might live to like your 200 or something like that. Which is like, maybe we better stick around. Maybe we should stick around as long as we possibly can, so we can see what unfolds here, right?
The one question that I now ask myself is, how good can it get? You know, like it's great now. Well, how much better can it get? So like that's almost like the next up leveling. How good can it get?
Yeah, it could get really good.
Yeah,
like really, really good. When you start tapping into states of like unconditional love, you know, I've experienced like moments of like just like pure peace or pure unconditional love, and it's like you almost like can't even. It's hard to remain in that state because it's just like so amazing. And so it's like a lot of people get wrapped up in like, what are we doing here on this planet? You know, like what is this all about? For me, it's about like that connection with all. And like when you connect like that, it's like experiencing 30 seconds in peace can completely transform your life.
I love that.
Yeah, you know, and so it's like that's what it's about, because like this is who we really are, right? And you know, we've gotten lost in our addictions and our avoidance of pain and all of that stuff, right?
What do you say brings you to that state? Like, when do you experience that?
It's by a complete letting go of like the ego. So the ego is the mind, and the mind has one function, and it's to protect us and to keep us safe. And so once you start unraveling what those protections are. For example, one of my protections is to eat sugar and drink pop when I feel some sort of rejection, and I've made these connections. And so if I keep going to that, I will block my enlightenment because I'm not facing the thing, right? And so once you start facing these things, the more you face them, the more you deal with them, the more you become your true self. And your true self is unconditional love. You look, you got kids, like, you know, like my daughter has 150 stuffed animals. She knows every single one of their names, and she loves every single one of them, like with everything in her being. Like that's who we really are, right? But it gets lost. It gets, you know, we get disconnected from that. We think we need to go out there and get more money, or even to get in shape or whatever. But I do believe that, you know, sometimes even in getting in shape, there's like some sort of you're thinking that that's going to be the thing that will make you feel differently. But what I found was, as when I did get in shape, was like, oh, once you get there, you're kind of go, oh, I still feel the same. Yes, I feel good and I'm more energetic, but you know, I'm still insecure. You know, or a lot of like guys that do steroids and stuff, they did those out of like insecurities, you know, and so it's like now that they're big, they're still insecure.
Right.
Yeah. You know, once you have the money, it's like you haven't changed, right? Yeah, life's a little easier, but you're like, then you become fearful that you're going to lose the money. So it's all about like this looking within and continuing to knock down these walls, continuing to face all of the things that you've been avoiding facing. And when you do that, and then you have the proper mental clarity through diet and exercise that you have. It's like you go to these places that are like, you can't even describe them, right? It's like I was doing in my group the other night, I was doing a meditation with a group, and in my meditations, like I always like wipe away anything that I think is supposed to happen in the meditation. We're doing guidance for the whole entire group, and we're all sitting there, and so I'm like, just clear the slate, and like I'm like, what? Like I can't remember what the question was, but whatever it was, I experienced like 1 second of like just that connection to all. And like I could have wrote an entire book about that 1 second, right? Because it was just so much happened,
so powerful,
right? And it's so powerful. It flows through your whole entire body, and you're connected to every single person on the planet, and especially the people that are close to you. And so it's like, whoa. But it's like, it was only 1 second. And so like, and I experienced moments of like peace, like ultimate peace, and where I was like not even part of like body and mind, and I was just like, just connected to all. But the second I brought awareness to the state, I pulled myself out of it. And so I'd basically been kind of like chasing that ever since I went there. Right. And so the only way that I know how to do it is to continue to become that state through removing my protections, through feeling the things that I'm avoiding feeling, and so putting myself into the uncertainty, and like say, hey, like what's going to come up here when I'm in this uncertain place? Oh, I want to retreat. I want to isolate myself. I want to give up. Like these are all the protections that we've created, right? And so this is the thing that I think coaches get to see, because you see all that.
Yeah, like self-doubt.
All of it.
Imposter syndrome.
Right, and these are all the coats that we put on, right? That block us from being connected to our true essence, which is the state of love, essentially. So
yeah, I love that.
It's powerful stuff. Yeah. Anyways, that was my rant about enlightenment. But anyways, and I think that you're doing like an amazing thing though, because that mental clarity and the empowerment that you went through in your journey, and now you're sharing it with other people. It's like if you save one person's life, it's like you've kind of done it.
It's like
what is more important than that? There's no amount of money, there's no nothing. It's like if someone was gonna die because of their diet, or actually they're gonna kill themselves because they hated the way they looked, or whatever the hell is it, and you changed their life, it's like,
well, you kind of are, in a sense, like you're showing them a new way to feel better. Like I want people to feel better and move and feel alive and not stuck. And I just feel too many women in particular feel that way, or feel like they can't move forward. And that's just my experience, so I can resonate and connect with other people who are similar, who were in my spot.
And I'm guessing like before you went through that, you felt like powerless, and now you feel powerful.
I didn't exactly. I didn't know the answer. Like I was saying, I feel like I have this magic solution that I want to share if people are open to receiving it, and at their low where they're just tired and they need a new way to think about it, instead of running on that hamster wheel that they've been going back and forth over and over and over again, and that just becomes exhausting.
But it's like, if it's exhausting, it's like that may be exactly what it needs to be, so that you finally get to that point of like, enough's enough, and I'm ready. I need to call somebody. I need to do something. And I think that's a great takeaway from this podcast. Is just like, there will be a point. You can surrender to the fact that there will be a point where you're like, enough's enough, right? Is enough. Now you can choose to wait for that point, or you can like get going now,
or start making
But unfortunately, most people have to wait.
I agree. Which is usually how it happens.
It is
because it's easier.
It's like you eventually get point, and this is like what I've said is like God or the universe or whatever your understanding is of that higher power will continuously show you the answers, will show you the path, and then the more you continue to like just not see them, eventually like God just starts like putting like logs in front of you, so you trip over them and be like, do you see it now? Right. And that's eventually what happens. And like my mentor, Dr. David Hawkins, where I basically do all my work from, all his teachings, he had this great saying that if you don't have a problem, get one. And the reason being is because when you hit these lows with problems, this is like a great turning point. So, I mean, this is like, if we're speaking to the people that are listening to the podcast, it's like, if you have a broken record, and you're finally fed up, you can wait for the universe to trip you up so you fall flat on your face where you finally make a change. Or you can say, well, let's take a look at what that thing is here today.
And why is it broken?
Yeah, right. And so let's take action before you have to hit that rock bottom, and that's ultimately what I want from everybody. But I also recognize that, sometimes you just gotta let people hit rock bottom.
Yeah, and you can't want it more than they want it for themselves, right?
Yeah. He had another saying too that is like, someone said, "What's the best thing you can do for somebody that is like has addiction to alcohol?" He said, "Buy him a case of beer." And it was because the sooner that person hits rock bottom,
exactly,
right, the sooner they'll finally come out of it. If you try and change them by saying this is what you need to do, and so it's all interesting stuff to kind of observe. But hey, thanks for taking the time. I think it was a great conversation.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, where do people find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram at Cup of Dre.
DRI.
Yes. So somebody said it to me the other day, cup of dry.
That's what I thought it was.
Because dry fit, right? Like Nike dry fit.
Yeah.
So Adriana, Dre. My family calls me Dre sometimes. So cup.of.dri, Cup of Dre. Okay. And then I do have a podcast on Spotify and Apple called A Cup of Dre. So just sort of like thoughts, part of me that I want to share. And if they resonate with you, great. And just something for you to think about. So those two spaces.
Yeah, right on. And like what's next for you? Like you got this great life, you built this great life, you had this great transformation. Like where do you see yourself going in 10 years from now?
It's a great question. I don't have an answer for that. Okay. I do want to build up this endeavor that I've started, this online coaching. And so I'm just taking steps to understand it more, to put myself out there in ways that I didn't think were possible. And like I said, learning sort of that business side of things. That I'm an engineer by trade, actually. I don't even, there was no business courses in engineering.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, that's a whole new realm. And if you're going to go into something that you've never seen, that's going to challenge you and make you feel like a fraud or like an imposter, that's definitely it. So it's like, I just want to go towards what's hard or what I'm avoiding, because I know that that's the path forward.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's actually, it's so funny that you say that, because that's something that's just been coming to me lately, is that whatever your mind is telling you, do the opposite. Because the mind is only trying to protect you. Right? And so it's like, just go towards the discomfort and you will have the growth.
Right. So there's the saying, or the I don't know if it's called, the answer is in the work you're avoiding, or the magic is in the work that you're avoiding.
Yeah. I love that.
That's where you'll find it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again for taking the time, and we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget, if you haven't already, if you got any value at all from this podcast, just hit that subscribe button. See you again next Sunday.